So, good afternoon, everyone. I see still someone entering the room, but I would like to start this very interesting panel. This event is titled Space Law for New Space Actors, Fostering Responsible National Space Activities. And I'll briefly would like to introduce this panel discussion with a very brief presentation. Assuming that it works. It doesn't. Okay, no. Voila. I believe I can make it. Okay, good. So very briefly, the main point of this slide is to say that from a scientific and technical perspective, plus if we look at the economic, socio-economic ecosystem, and also from the legal and policy perspective, the times that we are living in are really, let's say, witnessing a sort of a revolution in terms of number of objects launched into outer space, number of space debris, number of, let's say, also players which are entering the space arena, state and non-state, while in the past we had more state actors than non-state actors. And also, if you want the commercial side of it, the space economy is currently valued at around $400 billion US, and as this, let's say, field is considered to become, potentially to become a $1 trillion economy in just 20 years. And in addition to that, we see more and more commercial activities based on services and applications on space-based data and infrastructures, which can be really disruptive in a positive sense. And last but not least, in the third column, it's clear that we do need the global governance, that we do need some rules of the road, and it's the right moment to discuss, the right time to discuss how we do it, under which umbrella we do it, and which goals we want to achieve. And briefly, just to introduce the link between what is going on in the UN system and also what we do with our member states. The Secretary General on the 10th of September announced and published a report called Our Common Agenda, based on the UN 75 Declaration, which contained 12 commitments. And in these 12 commitments, you see number 3, which is peace, more or less, where space was mentioned. And so the idea is to have a summit of the future in September 2023. Will be a head of state summit, the same week of the high level, let's say the high level week of the GA will also see the Secretary General hosting the summit. The summit of the future will have 7 high-level tracks, and one will be on outer space, and in particular on outer space related to space traffic management and future global governance. Why this is so important for what we are discussing here? Because it's a clear action from the UN Secretary General towards space traffic management, towards, let's say, governance. And this is strongly linked to activities developed at a national level on space law and policy. Clearly, because there is a link between the national activities and what we do at the international level under the umbrella of the UN. In the, let's say, quite broad range of activities that we conduct under capacity building, which is one of our core mandates, you may see that there is one of the pillars, which is space law for new space actors. I'm not going through the other projects, probably at another occasion. And so what is extremely important to notice here is that this project this initiative started just a few years ago. We got the strong support since the beginning of the government of Luxembourg, which allowed us to really start the project in the best possible way. The idea is really to increase awareness on the importance of national space law and to support member states in need with capacity building activities, training, etc. And 1 week of this kind just ended in Chile just a few days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago. And Chile is also one of our supporters. We have Secure World Foundation, Belgium, and Japan, and I hope that more countries will come. So, having said that, I believe it's extremely important to notice that this project is not only political support, but also financial support. It's a multi-donor initiative of the office and shows how this triangular approach, so us as the brokers and developed countries on one side, the developing countries on the other side, can really be a good triangular approach, as I said, for fostering collaboration in different ways, and in particular helping member states and new players to enter the space arena with the right approach, the right behavior. So having said that, and before I start with the questions to our panelists, I would like to ask kindly the technical support from the back of the room. We have a video message from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan, Wajima Takehiko. Can you please send the video? Thank you.
Madam Simonetta Di Pippo, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to express my deep gratitude for having me today, and I also like to congratulate all of you to attend this very important event. As you might know, Japan acknowledges the importance of the rule of law in outer space to ensure the safety, security, sustainability, and stability of outer space activities. In this regard, we are grateful for having the opportunity to cooperate with the UN-USA on Space Law for New Space Actors project and to support the capacity building in Asia-Pacific countries for drafting their national space legislation and policy, as well as raising awareness of existing normative framework. Considering the growing diversity of space activities, it is important that each country conduct its space activities in a responsible manner in accordance with existing normative framework. Countries in the Asia-Pacific region have been also expanding their space activities. As a result, there is a growing interest in space policy and law among these countries. In response, Japan has been actively taking part in community building related to space policy and law. For example, this year we prepared and submitted a joint report on the status of national space legislation in the Asia-Pacific region, working with Australia, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, the Republic of Korea, Thailand, and Vietnam to the 60th session of COPIA's Legal Subcommittee. Our cooperation with UN-USA is another endeavor for enhancing the drafting capabilities and implementation of national space legislation and policies in the Asia-Pacific region. Through this cooperation with UN-USA, we look forward to supporting new space actors in the region for advancing the rule of law in space. In closing, I strongly hope that you learn a lot from this event for your future success. Thank you for your kind attention.
Well, it's really an encouraging message from the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Japan. As I said, is one of our supporters in this project. Now, we were supposed to have another meeting, video from the executive director of the Secure World Foundation, Peter Martinez. He asked me to read his brief statement instead, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read the statement of Peter. Dear colleagues, it is a pleasure to share with you some perspectives and insights on behalf of the Secure World Foundation in the context of our involvement with the prestigious Space Law for New Space Actors Legal Services Advisory Project. And we regret that we are not able to join you in person for this session. Secure World Foundation is a private operating foundation headquartered in the United States of America and dedicated to advancing cooperative solutions for space sustainability. Integral to space sustainability is awareness of the delicate nature of the space domain, of the necessity of international cooperation and coordination, of respect for the rules of law in outer space, of the requirement that all states pay due regard to the corresponding interests of other states in outer space, and other foundational obligations in space law. Indeed, the foundational principles of international space law are the very underpinnings of using outer space in peaceful, sustainable, and prosperous ways. As new entrants continue to join the already robust and diverse field of actors in outer space, having a shared international understanding of these foundational principles will be a necessary prerequisite in ensuring those peaceful, sustainable, and prosperous ways. For the Secure World Foundation, the optimal partner for capacity building of this nature around the world is obviously the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. And we have been honored to partner with and support them, as well as join with the other partners, the government of Belgium, Chile, Japan, and Luxembourg. In conclusion, dear colleagues, the Secure World Foundation firmly supports this project, and we hope this session on fostering responsible national space activities held today can serve as a forum for pragmatic discussions and sharing opportunities on how to move forward with this ambitious project. We look forward to hearing any outcomes from today's session and to continuing to work with you and USA and the partner countries to achieve the project aims, including an upcoming technical advisory mission. Thank you for your kind attention. And so, also these very encouraging words from the Secure World Foundation. And I would like then to move to the first question. The first question will be for Professor Dr. Kai-Uwe Schrögl, President of ISL. And the question, Kai-Uwe, is why is national space law and policy important for national space activities? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Simona, for that question. And thank you very much for inviting IISL, the International Institute of Space Law, to this prestigious panel. IISL is the global association of space lawyers, practitioners, and academicians alike. And we are representing or have representatives for more than 50 countries. So really broad and global coverage. And we are dedicated to one specific mission, and this is to extend the rule of law in outer space. I think this is important to stress, the rule of law in outer space. Outer space is a global common, and don't be deceived. Even if there is no sovereignty in outer space, sovereignty by nations or by private citizens, there is the rule of law in outer space. We have a set of international treaties and a lot of norms in addition to that, which govern this global common and make it a global common. And there I am with the question, and I will have two specific messages, not only to the newcomer states, but to all the states. The first message is sign and ratify the treaties which are already in place. I say that because even the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which is the basic document which sets out the principles for how space is governed, is only ratified by less than 120 states, which is a bit more than half of the states. So we need more signatures. So any newcomer has to first look up, and you can do that in the documentation by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Is my country a signatory, and is it a state party to, first of all, this agreement, but also to the other agreements, the Astronauts Rescue Agreement, the Liability Convention, the Registration Convention, and the Moon Agreement. And if you are not, consider that the texts of these treaties have been adopted unanimously by the UN General Assembly and are just waiting for you to be signed and ratified. Only with this, you will also get the rights you earn from being a state party to use outer space with all freedom, with the set of parameters related to cooperation and to equality and free access to outer space. You also have obligations. Obligations, for example, and in particular to help others, to cooperate, to give due regard to the activities of others, and also that you are not allowed to appropriate outer space for your country or your national citizens. So that is message number one. Sign and ratify the existing treaties. And the second point, the second message is, and this relates even closer to your question, it is the interrelationship between policy and law. National policy, national law. 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, it was quite enough to have a national space policy. But now you also need a national space law. Because a national space law usually deals with the authorization of private activities. And this means also that all the startup activities, also the new space activities, commercial activities, private activities need to be governed under the regime which is set out by the Outer Space Treaty. And you have to translate that, any newcomer, but also still established space powers, need to establish a national legislation which takes regard and builds on these principles in the Outer Space Treaty and the other agreements, and translates that into a national regime, how you, the government, authorize the activities of the others. And then, if you happen to be a member of the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, you should also take care that this is done in the greatest possible harmonization of these national space legislations and regulations in order to provide a level playing field on the international level. So these are my two messages: sign and ratify the agreements, and when you set up your own space activities, combine immediately from the outset a national space policy together with the national space legislation authorizing private space activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kai-Uwe. I have to say that probably you are aware of this other initiative that we have, Access to Space for All. And in this case, with the support of Japan, again, we have been able to support the launch from Kenya of their first satellite, and then also Guatemala and Mauritius this year. But the reason why I'm making this small example is just example because it's just in line with what you said, because Kenya launched the satellite, 1 unit CubeSat, and then they developed a national space law, and then they have a national space agency. They registered the satellite. They even registered when the satellite re-entered. So it's a way of, you know, having the full breadth of activities that you have to put in place in order to become a spacefaring country. So it's quite a good ecosystem that you can develop, also working with us and working in this environment. So, second question is for the Chief Director Umbulani Mudao, Space Science and Technology, Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa. And the question for you is, what are the challenges to developing national space law and policy?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. As we know, specifically from the developing nations, that if I were to start outlining all the challenges that we face in developing our policies and our legislation, I'm sure we would need another day to do so. But thank you very much. I just want to highlight a few challenges that we face, and I'll do so looking at a global perspective as well as from the developing and the national perspective, because I think that's very important to do that. We've just heard from the professor that the ratification of those treaties, it's of critical importance. We are also saying that we should acknowledge that these treaties that Prof was referring to have been developed in the 50s and the 70s. And therefore, surely the review of some of those will be very critical for the developing nations. We're saying that from the point of view that there are current developments and of course future developments that are currently happening that we think are not catered in those treaties. So that becomes very important, because then we get limited in some of this work that we're doing as we look at the current and future exploration needs. Secondly, from the global perspective, it's on the rapid development of commercial space sectors. We've seen and we're witnessing as we engage in this session that the space economy is growing at one of the fastest rate ever. And therefore, it is going to be very important that the commercial space industry, which are not catered for by these treaties and the national space legislation, that it's something that we have to take into consideration. From the developing country of national challenges, there's a greater challenge, particularly from us who are in government, in finding the balance. The balance that I'm referring to here is in terms of the socioeconomic imperatives. Most of the developing nations have to take into account numerous competing priorities to support society as well as to drive the economy. And therefore, the policy that we have to put in place for it to be effective, it should be driven and be informed by societal needs. We need to, as part of putting together these policies, make sure that the development and priorities should be largely informed by the local context. That becomes very critical in ensuring that you develop policies and legislations that are relevant to your societal challenges as well as your national imperatives. Secondly, from the national point of view, the challenges on policy and legislation buy-in by key stakeholders. It could be at a political level. And we have noted and we have experienced that there's a lot of red tapes and lack of awareness and understanding of the benefits of space science and technology, which inhibits the drive for the development of space law, as well as policy, as decision makers need more awareness of benefits to be able to support high-tech related legislative development. Lastly, even though I've outlined some of these challenges, I think implementation becomes very critical. And once we've put in place these policies and legislative frameworks, we need to then establish relevant institutions from the regulatory point of view. We've seen back in South Africa how effective our South African Council for Space Affairs are in ensuring that the stimulation of industrial growth does happen and putting in place regulations that will favor and ensure that we do develop our domestic industry. Secondly, on the implementation, we have developed the National Space Agency, as you've heard from Madam Chair, from the example that has been given about Kenya. That becomes very critical in ensuring that there is a point of central coordination for the national space activities. Lastly, I would like to highlight that as we do the implementation, that has to be underpinned by targeted human capital development programs. We have to countries have to set up sustainable infrastructure and ensure that the outreach programs are in place to inspire the youth and grow the industry. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I see a lot of questions, more or less, I mean, a few of them are similar and are linked to what you just said. So we go to the questions later. And now, the third question is for Minister Fayot from the Ministry of Economy in Luxembourg. I don't know how to thank you for the great support that Luxembourg has been giving to this project, but in general also the general political support of your country to the activities that we do. So thank you. The question for you is, as the main contributor to the project, what is your experience from participating in this project, and what is your main motivation in participating in it? Thank you. For yours.
Thank you very much, Simonetta, for the invitation to participate in this panel. It's, as you know, our Space Resources Initiative started back in 2016, and the starting point of it all was really a law which was enacted in 2017 and which made an interpretation of the Outer Space Treaty to essentially really promote the commercial exploration of space, to get this whole ecosystem going, and to also boost innovation. Now, right from the start, and I was the rapporteur of that law at the time, I was a member of parliament back then, it was clear to me that this mere principle of private appropriation of space resources could not be the only principle governing this sector. And also, right from the beginning, we placed this Space Resources Initiative under a motto, under a mission statement, which was really that we were really driving this with the aim to contribute to the peaceful exploration and sustainable utilization of space resources for the benefit of humankind. Now that sounds like a very nice slogan, but it is much more than that. And really the idea behind participating in this project stems from this mission statement. It is essential that this be an inclusive effort. And therefore, in addition to putting in place an ecosystem, incubators, research, financing instruments, and everything you need to do to build an ecosystem, it was quite clear also that we needed to participate in the international conversation about the future space law, and that we not only needed to participate in it, but also include other countries, less developed countries, who were willing to participate also in this activity. I also happen to be a Minister for Development Cooperation, and with that position, obviously I also have a very special sensibility for this question. We have, in my Ministry of Development Cooperation, developed something which is called Space for Development and Humanitarian Action, and our participation in this project is part of this axis of our cooperation work. So we are very keen to help our partner countries with a focus on Africa to develop capacities, but also to develop their laws to themselves be players in this space sector. Because we know from the conversations we are having with them that, of course, the space sector is having huge upsides for them with a whole lot of problems they are facing, even more acutely than we do, and beginning with climate change, of course, with droughts, with farming problems, and in all these spaces, of course, a hugely interesting and promising sector. So I think this is part really of a strategy to engage with developing countries, to develop space capacities, to develop a national legislation to participate in this sector, as well as developed countries, because I very much agree with what Professor Schrogel said. This cannot be a new frontier, a new gold rush. We need to have common rules. We need to have an international level playing field as to how we are going to develop this space economy, and we need to do it before this is all already in place. I think we see that the big challenges humanity is facing, beginning with climate change, the environment, international tax infrastructure, architecture, all these require common rules, and we see how difficult it is to come up with them. So I think we need to really progress this conversation, and that is really the reason why it is so important for us to participate in this project. Now, what is the experience we made so far? Of course, it has been a little bit stalled by COVID, as so many things over the last 18 months, but I'm confident that now the work will resume and that we will be able to make progress, of course. But I can tell you that as a country and with my both ministerial hats, I'm very much committed to this project.
Well, thank you very much, and indeed it resumed, because as I mentioned, we had already 1 week quite intense in Chile. So, and the fourth question is just in this flow, for Colonel Luis Felipe Saez, is the Assistant Director of Space Affairs at the Chilean Air Force. And the question for you is, did you find the Space Law for New Space Actors Project Technical Advisory Mission, just ended, valuable to your country? And what would you recommend us to improve, if any?
Hello? Yeah. In behalf of the Chilean Space Community, thank you so much for this very kind invitation. For us, it's so important to be here and share with you with this very important and distinguished panel. You know, Chile have a very long history in the space. We started in the 60s, and probably my answer become to be a kind of summary of the one that you already did. During the last 25 years, we have a space asset, flying satellite and learning a lot. But always we face the national space development as a technical issue. So 3 years ago, we realized that we need to change. So the first issue that we made was meet you. So we went to Vienna, because we need to meet someone who have the landscape, and you have it. So in that context, the first issue that we realized that in any national space program, we need to set the people at the center and at the top. So the first thing that we made was change our mind about how to manage the natural space development. So for that reason, our natural space program is pretty a social program now, not just a technological one, not an economical one. So with that in mind, the core of the program is the talent promotion. For example, now we have one specific school we call National Space School Program, and as well some PhD, master, just specifically related with the space development. For example, now we have a singer who take the sound of the universe and make music. He will be probably very well known. And now a lady that made architect for the moon, because Chile, with our condition, is like to be in the space, but you are in the Earth. So that comprehensive approach was the first very valuable support that we received from your side. The second was related with the way how we can use our national space program as a channel, as a path for the international collaboration. So now we are talking about multilateral, binational space program in all the segments, space, ground, it doesn't matter really. So now we're starting to talk with different countries about to have the possibility to perform a binational space program. So very impressive in the last 3 years, because 3 years ago, when we don't have the chance to get your support, we was talking about the resolutions, the payload. The last very important support that we receive for your work is the thing that we realize that the space need to be considered as a key variable in our national equation for development. So how we introduce that? And we realize that the way how first need to be in the way how we are able to develop technologies for one side and for the other to knowledge creation in order to improve the quality of life and to move our economy to a more digital one. So at the level of the talent promotion, in which the people is in the center, at the level of the international relationship, and in the level of the space economy, that's the value that you provide to us. And I think now the challenger that we have in the region is with your support, and as we made during the last 2 years with this very impressive conference, is we able to increase the space culture in the region in order to talk and to understand that we can have the chance to be a player, and the space is a board, but we need rules, the rule of law. And with that in mind, doesn't matter if we are a beginner in this play, like a chess, doesn't matter the kind of pieces that you have. You could have a very traditional one or a very sophisticated one, but the end, if the rule of law, if provide to us the board, we can play, and we can use the space as a key factor for our national development. Thank you so much.
So really, thank you very much. And well, among the various questions, there are a few that are more or less the same. And so I would start with the one related to Africa countries, where it says, the question is, how can Africa countries without space programs develop a national space policy and strategy? And this is linked in a way to the other question, which was, should an emerging space nation establish a space law or space agency first? So in reality, is chicken and egg problem that we know quite well. But I leave you, who wants to take this question? Ambulani.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The issue of whether you establish an institution prior to the formulation of your policy, it's quite critical. That institution needs to be informed but the national priorities. And we believe that the national policy should be the one that provide the guiding principles for the establishment of relevant institutions that will ensure that you then respond to your national priorities and contribute to the global good. The AU, the African Union Commission, has, as we speak, for the countries that are looking at developing the national space policy and strategy, has a global or a blueprint, which is the African space strategy and the African space policy. And that it's a very high level policy and strategy that will provide guidance to other African countries that might be looking at venturing into the area of space. South Africa has been very key in the development of those strategy and policy as a leader of the working group at the time. So those African countries that are looking at developing those policies should feel free to engage with the African Union Commission. I think there are also representatives of the African Union Commission here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There is anyone else who wants to add something to this, for this question? So first, the space law or the space agency? Kayube.
That's indeed a rather academic question. Thank you for addressing it to me. But it is a practical question. What are the priorities of the country? You have to define that on the political, but also on a societal level. And I understand that the citizens in Africa are extremely aware of what is at stake, the context, and so on. And the politicians, they know about the impacts. As you said, we heard a presentation by the African Union Commission yesterday at the Parliamentarian event, and it was extremely straightforward, clear about what the impact of space policy, space technology for societies, but also for the political corpus is, regional cooperation, and also the standing of Africa inside the international community. So I think it is not a either or chicken and egg. I think it's coming really together, and it is nowadays the common knowledge that things have to develop in the two elements together. And I think also that through the capacity building, which has been undertaken, it's absolutely clear that we don't have to worry about anybody else, and certainly not us teaching lessons to Africa, how to handle things. I just should mention that the African team last year has won the Manfred Lux Space Law Moot Court. So we have capacity understanding there, and it's in your hands how you want to shape your policies, what you want to achieve with that, and how you handle that on the governance level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to address this question to you, Franz. On you made already some references in your previous answer to my question, but the question here is, what challenges do you see in making space law compatible with the commercial sector seeking to reach outer space? So you've been talking about space resources, but also in Luxembourg you had quite an innovative approach on fostering the private sector. And so what you would suggest, which challenges you see in that?
Well, I think the main challenge is really to find the balance between, on the one hand, getting the private sector to invest in the space sector, to promote innovation, promote investment, and on the other hand, to make sure that the benefits are shared equally, again, among mankind. I think that's really the balance we need to strike also in coming up with a new legal framework on an international level, and also the balance that always needs to be found at a national level. We have recently in Luxembourg adopted a new law in 2020 to frame the whole space sector, which really is, I think, much more comprehensive in subjecting space activities to governmental authorization to make sure that this is all happening in a very regulated and harmonious way. And I think it's really a question of finding that balance between, on the one hand, private interests, making sure that innovation is there, promoting research and development, also private research and development on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that there is that it is for the general benefit of societies, and that is I think the big challenge in every law that is designed worldwide, and I think that's also the option we need to take when we partner with the developing world, with the global south in designing their own laws and regulations, and also in building capacity there. Because just coming to the previous question, I agree, it's not so much a question of building a space agency. It is about building capacity, and it is about understanding what you want to achieve with your space initiative. It can be a very different impulse between a country like Luxembourg, which has decided to start with an economic niche that was to be developed and has basically evolved into something much larger, including this participation in this project, and an African country which can have a very different interest, which is primarily on, again, space observation, Earth observation, climate change, farming, etc. And I think that will drive and determine what capacity is needed and what legal framework needs to be put in place.
Oh, thank you very much. And I have a question for Luis. From your perspective, how is the international cooperation help the development countries to invest in space? So how important is international cooperation in what we all do?
I think that they need to be focused based on the rules, and also in the kind of segment in which every player, the new player, could have the chance to be, in the way to optimize the use of the resource and to become to be a very competitive country. Probably the space will provide a huge alternative of collaboration. Find a way how, at the beginning, is the first challenger. We consider that the country who right now have one particular national space program have an advantage, because the base for the collaboration could be that program. As a program need to be also addressed in a very comprehensive approach. The field of collaboration are huge. So we can collaborate not just in the technology development, knowledge creation, talent promotion, culture, rule of law. So there are many fields of collaboration. So we consider that the potential that each country have is based first in the way how they are able to build their own national space program. Without that, there are no, probably, any possibility to have the internal synergy for collaborate. Will be very isolated, very spot activities. And you know, we consider as the space domain is so challenging, The team building capability that the space provides as a perfect excuse, internally first and worldwide later, is one of the great issues of the space. So at the end, the way how the country build the National Space Program, define the strategy, and with the strategy define the segment in which they could be very competitive and collaborate in order to be able to achieve it is the key factor at the end.
Well, if I may, on what is, surfacing also from this discussion is that probably international cooperation is also extremely important as an element of accelerating the results. I mean, it's easier or quicker to reach results, in particular in developing and emerging countries, if you get support from developed countries that already went through the process, and also from the UN, like us, because we work with everyone, and so we are really in a sort of a collector of best practices and lessons learned. And this can help developing and emerging countries to shrink the time that they need to learn what to do. This is really interesting because it's from this, let's say, bilateral, trilateral, multilateral collaborations that we foster really, let's say, a better world in a way, so that we look at something that is overall going better and better. So I believe we are getting close to the end. I don't know how to help you, to thank you for this panel, because it was short, just one question each, more or less, plus the questions from the audience. By the way, I had a long list, but it was impossible to address all of them, also because few of them were a little bit off track. So, but having said that, thank you very much to all of you. And I hope that we can do it more and more, but each of us can learn also from these exchanges. And I hope that the audience really enjoyed this discussion. So thank you very much again. Really a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.